They're online. He's probably there. Liu, are you there? I can see your presentation.
Oh yes, yeah, I just didn't hear you a
Okay,
moment. Now it's
let
okay.
me give me some time to introduce you. Liu is Associate Professor of Law and Deputy Director of Office of Humanities and Social Sciences at Tsinghua University. He was supposed to be here, but due to unavoidable circumstances, he couldn't show up. He receives his JSD degree from Yale University, a well-known university in USA. He works on public law, internet law and policies, legal theory, and law and technology. His recent works appear in leading journals like Social Sciences in China, China Legal Science, American Journal of Comparative Law, Computers and Security, and International Journal of Constitutional Law, etc. He is a board member of China Cyber and Information Law Association, deputy head of the legal team at China Artificial Intelligence Industry Alliance. He was awarded the YNTMA, I don't know how to pronounce it, prize by the American Society of Comparative Law and other honors. So, distinguished professor, he is here, not physically. We are missing him, missing his on-site presence, but he has given his concurrence to be there online, and he will be our next presenter. Professor Han, the floor is yours. Please.
Okay. Thank you very much. Could you hear me? It's okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it is really my honor to be invited to make a presentation here. And I'm really sorry because I have some very important work here. So I cannot go to Sri Lanka, and it's really a shame. But I will try my best to make my presentation understandable. And my topic is about the Chinese conception of cyber sovereignty and its legal framework. I will also discuss about the international tendency in terms of cyber sovereignty, especially on the topic of its relationship to internet fragmentation. So I will provide some background information for you to understand my topic. And when we talk about the concept of cyber sovereignty, it has a kind of antithesis that is usually called cyber utopianism, which is to say, well, there is actually no sovereignty in the cyberspace, and there should not be so in the cyberspace. And this is not a recent idea. It can be dated back to the early commercialization and socialization of the use of internet in the world, especially in the United States. For example, as early as 1996, there was a American author called John Barlow. He published a very famous article called The Declaration of the Independence of Cyberspace. The idea he expressed is that the governments of the industrial world, you very giants of flesh and steel. I come from cyberspace, the new home of mine. On behalf of the future, I ask you of the past to leave us alone. You are not welcome among us. You have no sovereignty where we gather. Well, this is clearly expression of the concept of no sovereignty in the cyberspace. And actually, he wants to say, well, the cyberspace must be governed by the netizens or the users.
Professor Han, could you move to slideshow mode?
Oh yeah, I moved that, but does it show up? Sorry. It's okay now?
No, it's normal mode. It's not slideshow.
So
yeah,
it's okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you
Good.
very much. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
Sorry. Yeah. Well, this is actually first slides with content. Well, I'm talking about the erstwhile idea of a cyber utopianism that denies the existence of traditional sovereignty in cyberspace, and typically represented by this declaration. And that represents a kind of a generation's expectation about internet governance. That is to say, well, internet governance should avoid the interference of governments, especially traditional states. Against this background, the idea of cyber sovereignty or the denial of the cyber utopianism comes about. Actually, not only in China, but also from some legal scholars in the US that try to argue that, well, actually, the states still played a very important role in internet governance. We cannot just expect the wholly self-governance of the netizens or technicians or engineers. Then we then China has expressed the utmost or in the strongest sense of the conception of cyber sovereignty. Before we try to understand the Chinese conception of cyber sovereignty, we should try to understand what China understand the internet itself. Actually, China got access to the global internet in 1994, and in the initial age, the Chinese government as well as the society understood the internet as a ordinary means of telecommunication, like the phone, like the telegram. So nothing special. But increasingly, when the internet has gathered more information and content in itself, the Chinese government as well as many of the social players tended to understand the internet as a kind of electronic media, like a newspaper or a television. So but in recent years, in the last decades, and then the understanding shifted to a more comprehensive and more critical sense. That is to say, well, they try to understand the internet as the so-called fifth domain. Not only a means of telecommunication, not only a media, but a kind of separate space, independent from land, sea, air, or space. So it is called the cyberspace. What does that mean? That means, well, the traditional wars and peace, or military or political activities, ideological confrontations can exist in this space. So this is not only a space of communication or exchange of ideas, but also the kind of real world political and social and commercial activities can take place here. So then, when they try to understand the internet as this domain, the fifth domain, and the idea of sovereignty comes in. That is to say, well, the traditional Westphalian sovereignty applies in the fifth domain. What is Westphalian sovereignty? That you say, well, each state is supreme within its territory. So to translate it into simple words, that you say, well, this is my land, and so my powers is the highest. So applied to the internet or the cyberspace, try to say, well, the internet is especially when it comes to China or other countries, then the traditional states can exercise the sovereignty, powers and controls over this separated space. So internet is nothing special here. It's nothing exceptional. This is basically the idea of cyber sovereignty, that you say, well, they try to align the traditional territorial jurisdiction with the newly come internet. So internet can be separated into many domains. So then whether that implies internet fragmentation, I will talk about this issue later. So now we can see there are two visions of the internet governance, just in light of the idea of cyber sovereignty. One is we can call the cosmopolitan idea. That is, well, the internet is like the sea, and we should allow the free flow of information, of data, and we should to abandon the traditional territorial jurisdiction. We should abandon the traditional division of states on the earth. And no doubt this is a pretty American idea. That is, well, internet is a symbol of free speech. And in principle, there should be no restrictions on the flow of information. But just like in the area of a free sea, the UK actually become the hegemon in the world. And with this vision of cosmopolitan internet, we can see the American hegemony in the world. Against this, another idea we can call it the sovereign difference model. That is try to argue for a diversified system based upon the traditional state sovereignty. Each country have the power and authority to regulate the internet according to its own laws. But the dark side of this idea is the potential of internet fragmentation, which is the topic of this panel. And along with this idea, we can see some Chinese practice in both law and regulatory systems. For example, in internal sense, China, with this idea of cyber sovereignty, has a new understanding of the internet. So accordingly, the regulatory power system, the mechanism has changed, especially in the last 10 years. For example, before the idea of cyber sovereignty, many government agencies have the power to regulate the internet, including, for example, the ministries in charge of press and publication and news, and other, for example, the Ministry of Culture and the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology. And we have a Chinese saying called "Nine dragons tame the flood." So there is a fragmentation of regulatory powers in China over the internet. But with this new idea of cyber sovereignty, the authorities just to centralize all the powers into this organ, so-called the Cyberspace Administration of China, CAC. And it is also an organ of the party called the Office of the Central Leading Group for Cyberspace Affairs. So this one institution, but two names. But the point is, it is the single most important and the highest organ in charge of internet governance. And accordingly, the authorities has made some pillars of the cyber law, which embodies the idea of cyber sovereignty. For example, in 2016, the cybersecurity law has just prescribed some critical information infrastructure, for example, the most important websites or databases. And they impose the controls of the data transfer, especially transnational transfer of data, must get approval from the authorities. And also, it prescribes the data localization requirements for personal information and important data. And 5 years later, we have the data security law. The most important content of this law is that the data security review must be conducted before transfer of important data to the foreign jurisdictions. And also some articles is against the US long arm jurisdiction. And also in 2021, we have the personal information law. And for large amount of personal information, if you want to transfer it into other countries, it must get approval from the CAC, that is the Cyberspace Administration of China. And also the Chinese government tried to spread the idea of cyber sovereignty into the international sphere. For example, the most important venue for this is World Internet Conference. And the basic idea before this conference is the idea of cyber sovereignty. And it also has generated some in global responses. Uh, I must say this is not necessarily or a kind of answer to the Chinese idea, but we can find some concurrent tendencies of other jurisdictions, other countries, the efforts to emphasize the idea of cyber sovereignty, or in this newest form called the digital sovereignty. For example, the EU has issued a report called the European Digital Infrastructure and Data Sovereignty report, and try to set, just as the German leader Merkel has just said, well, she said, well, Europe should have its own data platform rather than relying on Google or Microsoft or these American firms. And because they want to ensure the European digital sovereignty, they even want to create a separate platform to restore the European citizens' data, try to free it from the US control. And what about US? US does not talk about this cyber sovereignty, but in practice, they try to defend it through a lot of means. So not in words, but in practice. The most important case is about U.S. government's ban on two Chinese technological companies. It's one of them is TikTok, and it's a app of the social media, especially for the teenagers. And another is Huawei. Huawei is a producer of these mobile phones and other very important information infrastructure. So the U.S. Is very concerned about the data sovereignty and technological sovereignty in practice, but in words that still defend the idea of internet freedom. And Russia has moved even more than China. They try to establish a separate internet called the Russia sovereign internet. Technically, to try to disconnect it to the global internet. And the global South, I have come to see a lot of urges and calls for data sovereignty, which means avoiding data colonialism and to provide protect the digital sovereignty of each country. For example, the African Union has issued a digital transformation strategy for Africa, and they said, well, even though Africa is most less restrictive in terms of data protection, soon it will be necessary to ensure localization of all personal data of African citizens. And in Senegal, the president hopes to protect the Senegalese digital sovereignty by building a data center within the country with the help of Huawei in 2021. And South Africa also published a draft policy to defend South Africans' data sovereignty. And even the Mar people have established a data sovereignty network to protect the data sovereignty and data rights of the Aboriginals, to fight against the European or US so-called data colonialism. And so let me just try to sum up. We can see a very interesting transition from the first generation of internet control and the contemporary one. the first generation, for example, in the early 1990s, typically represented by the Yahoo case in France. And Yahoo as a platform for e-commerce, and someone just was selling the Nazi goods, Nazi products in the platform, and the French government tried to ban them. And Yahoo said, well, this is our freedom of speech. And Yahoo said, well, you are in my country and should abide by my law. So you can say the first generation internet control or cyber sovereignty try to keep information out of the country, while the unhealthy information cannot enter into my country. This is a principle. But this generation, our time, usually the states want to keep the information within the country. So data localization law is the most important example. So this is a very interesting transition from the first generation to the second generation. So most countries has established most important countries has established localization laws. I will just provide a big picture here. Then the remaining question is whether these localization laws will lead to internet fragmentation. This is a very important question. Actually, I just want to argue that actually the idea of internet fragmentation is a little bit overblowing here, because there are many aspects of fragmentation. For example, first is the technical fragmentation with the IPv6, with many the technical errors of the DNS resolution, as well as some of the, for example, the top level the country domain names. So a lot of reasons, and also there is a government fragmentation, that is localization laws. But there are also a commercial fragmentation, so-called the walled gardens. For example, if you use the ordinary search engines, you cannot just find the information within a app, within a big platform. So the commercialization of the internet has led to some enclosed commercial spheres, and the users are just being confined into a specific app. So to me, the internet fragmentation is now just a tendency, but not a reality. This is my point about this. If something I had said is unclear, I welcome your questions and comments. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Professor, for your engrossing presentation. And also, I like the copy of your presentation because it had very few texts, but it was full of images. So I liked it. Now, is there any question from the audience, please?
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for your nice presentation.
Thank you.
So, in your presentation, we found that Westphalia, you mentioned the sovereignty of the Westphalia that ensured the security of the state. And my question is that, is there any cyber law that secured the cyberspace in the?
Okay. Thank you for our important question. If I understand your question correctly, I think there are a lot of recent laws that try to ensure a country's cyber sovereignty. And apart from the Chinese laws, like the cybersecurity law and the data sovereignty law, we can also see a lot of other laws. For example, in the US, they have a law in 2012 about the so-called the information sharing law. That is to try to say to protect the cybersecurity against the foreign attacks. the government have the power to collect information and data from the private companies, and the private companies have the obligation to provide data to the government, and that is a representative law of the U.S. And also, I noted recently, I think last year, Sri Lanka has just passed a law called the Personal Data Protection Law, and it has set up some mechanisms for the transnational transference of data. If I remember correctly, you must to meet some requirements before you can move data from Sri Lanka. And I think that also a kind of example of the laws ensuring data sovereignty or cyber sovereignty. Yeah, this is my answer.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much.
So, as per your version, you were saying that internet fragmentation is not a reality, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think about the laws like GDPR, the data protection
Yeah.
laws? Are they in any way contributing to internet fragmentation, at least transient fragmentation?
Yeah, this is a very important question. Very interesting. So my point is this: we have to distinguish between several layers of the internet, and to say to judge whether the internet is fragmented. When we talk about the data localization laws like GDPR or other countries' laws, we're actually talking at the content level. That is the application level. But in terms of the logic layer, for example, the TCP/IP protocols or the DNS system, the global internet is still interconnected, and that speaks the same language, and especially with the governance of the ICANN become truly internationalized and free from the US control. So I think as only if the logic level or logical layer become balkanized or fragmented or divided, we can only say, well, the internet is now not global. And at the content layer, we can see many shifts and even new development in the world. I think the recent phenomena of data localization or the protection of cyber sovereignty is a kind of a response to a panic about the data privacy concerns, about the trade protectionism or the populism against globalization. But if many countries come to realize, well, digital economy and international trade and a free flow of data is critical for our economic development, I think maybe in the near future, the most countries will just to loosen its control of data, and at least can have a new interpretation of these laws to balance the the concern for cyber sovereignty and the economic exchange of data in the world. So this is my general point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. But what I know is during right after the implementation of GDPR, many American companies had to move their or had to transiently stop their applications in Europe. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So today we have 2 online presentations and 2 on-site presentations. Let me take one on-site presentation now. And our next presenter will be Khandakar Rashidul Arifin. He is from Bangladesh Research and Education Network. He is a dynamic IT professional with 15 years of experience in IT service delivery, data center and cloud system. He has started his career as a data center operations manager at a leading telecom operator in Bangladesh in 2005. Apart from that, he has started his training career with an international training held at Interlab, AIT Thailand, providing training to the participants participated from multiple countries in 2009. He is currently engaged at BDN, as I have already mentioned. He is holding a Master's of Engineering degree in Information and Communication Technology from Asian Institute of Technology, Thailand. He also has some publications in international journals such as IEEE and AINTech. So, Khondakar Rashidul Arifin, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. My topic is internet fragmentation and NRENs. Actually, internet fragmentation is not a myth or concept anymore. Today, it's the reality. So in this presentation, I will describe several basic factors and actors and some driving force that causes the fragmentation of internets and its implication to the NRENs. And also, I'd like to acknowledge some groups and some contents. Those helped me to prepare this presentation. Actually, the speed that is applicable to this communication and drive us today is mostly based on the internet infrastructure. The objective of internet was to ensure the easy communication, unified and accessible internet to ensure the delivery or to establish the communication who willings to. Like someone wants to send an email to a user should not be restricted. It should be open, and if the receiver wants to receive it, he or she should be able to receive that email communication. So unified means user's experience should not deviate due to his geolocation, due to his device uses, or any other characteristics of the user. So that was the unified and accessible internet means. But what we see today, the internet is fragmented. Users, although they are willing to get the communication, willing to send something, cannot access to that. So that's the main phenomena of internet fragmentation. And it may be, it's not only country based, it can be even within the country. So any accessibility or any contents that restrict from receiver to receive it, that is the phenomena of internet fragmentation. There are major 5 dimensions of internet fragmentation. First of all, technical. Before that, I would like to mention one thing. Internet is fragmented. It's not only it's only the intention is not the cause. It can be sometime unintentional, like for technical reason. Technical major reason is the protocol translation and the different methodology and best practices use cases. For example, today there is depletion in IPv4 addresses. To conserve the IPv4 addresses, we use private IP addresses within our organization, and we use netting. Does it support all the communication established through netting? Most of the cases not. Some peer-to-peer communication and some application doesn't support the netting. So it's an unintentional case of fragmentation, which is the technical part, but it's obviously unintentional. There are 2 deviation in IP protocol. One is IPv4 and one is IPv6, but these 2 are not interoperable. IPv4 cannot directly communicate with IPv6 and vice versa. So we need to establish dual stack or some mechanism which can work as intermediary between this communication. Most of the case which require some investment, and that might not be possible for all over the world. So that causes another technical barrier for internet fragmentation. Another case is domain name, generic TLD. What happened in around, we know that this generic TLD is maintained by ICANN and IANA. IANA assigned the IP addresses. And most of them were English based, right? So what happens to China? China took a drastic step. They introduced another root server in their own language back in around 2000, before 2010. So what happens to that? The conversion between English and Chinese was not facilitated to all the equipment that were available in the market. So this type of things causes huge problems. So nowadays what happens? There are country-based generic TLDs are open, and the translator are also available, and there is country code based generic top level domain like two letters .lk, .bd, .cn. So what happens to this type of cases? Now it's really easy to block some content based on country. That's the geopolitical tension. And others are VPN based communication can be blocked, and some content or website can be, it's still, these are blocked based on country based, like China blocked Facebook, WhatsApp. Even in USA they block TikTok. In Saudi Arabia they block WhatsApp, the voice communication. So these are all geopolitical issue. Side by side there are also the technical issues as well. Economic trend can be caused not only is the financial issue, there are some other issues as well. Like I launch like Netflix, it requires a minimum bandwidth requirement, but some of the economic countries cannot meet those minimum bandwidth requirement to the home users. So they fail to get this Netflix streaming service. And some trading corporation also, like you have seen in the previous session that PayPal is banned in Bangladesh. So if we need to some trading which requires the PayPal, we cannot use it. So that sort of economic cases also causes the fragmentation of internet. Censorship and regulation is very common. Like in Egypt, back in 2011, they blocked the internet due to minimize the protest, the countrywide protest. In Kashmir, in India, they were blocked of internet. They were unavailable the internet for several months. So these are all censorship and international regulatory causes. Language and cultural barrier. If I develop a website in my own language, it may not be available to the other language people. They cannot use it. And there is no auto translation mode also. Some translation mode are available in English, but if that is embedded within the website, otherwise it's not available. So this major 5 dimension are the main driving force or main dimension of the internet fragmentation. And that's the NREN, the features and functionality of the NREN. High speed connectivity. I'm running out of time. NREN provides connectivity to the higher education and research institute and educational institutes. They provide the facility of collaboration like video conferencing, cloud service, or data sharing platforms. Huge number of journal and online contents are available through NRENs network. There are international partnership and international collaboration which actually drive different technical innovation activity. And international collaboration and joint project also executed through NRENs community. Later on, we will see how these NRENs are affected by the activity of internet fragmentation. Before that, let's see what are the driving factors of internet fragmentation. One is the government regulation. We have seen from the last session that although it's not established the government regulatory or internet governance, but still there are some basic principles of each and every country which is driven or which is controlled by the government. That's why there are one thing is common, that is each and every country has a internet gateway through which all the contents and all the internet resources are available to the users. So anytime they restrict access to the website, content, or services, it can be political, it can be illegal issue. Due to illegal issue, it can be due to harmful issue or adult content, whatever it is. But government has the regulation, government has the control on this content. And also they control the flow of information, specifically cross-border information. Geopolitical tension. As I mentioned earlier, that blocking contents and blocking online portals, specifically from specific countries, it can be a geopolitical tension cases. National security concern, restrict online accessibility and data localization policy, like in Bangladesh, the data generated within your country cannot be located, cannot be stored, or cannot be crossed to the border. And another thing is technological differences that I already mentioned, different standard protocol and encryption method. These are the main factors for internet fragmentation. Who are the actors? Government. They implement, they take measures for censorship or content blocking. International organization, UN, Internet Governance Forum, IANA, ICANN, who work to promote open and unified internet. But here is the point. Nowadays, countries like India, China, Russia, Iran, they're raising voice against ICANN's single ownership on this top-level domain maintenance. They want separate organization who will be the driving force of internet governance. And specifically, they mentioned there will be a separate governing body under UN, and the technical governing body should be like ITU, who are the participant from multiple countries. But these days, IETF, who actually provide the protocol functionality, mainly driven by the US-based engineers. Although the request for RFC, request for comments are published availability, but majority are from US engineers. That type of protest and that type of issue is nowadays it's raising. So international organizations should be more dynamic, not be country specific. Multinational corporation, like for example, Alibaba or AW or Amazon, different country has different regulations for data storage and data accessibility. So they have to, if any organization wants to do the business in multiple countries, they have to comply with the local policy. So that also causes them to run the business globally with a single platform. That's why sometimes they need to make their local presence in different countries. Internet service provider, completely they are directed by their local governments. Content provider and tech company, they also have to comply with the local laws and policies. Like back in 2005 or 6, China raised an issue that IETF provided protocol of wireless communication has some serious security policy. So they developed another regulation policy, which is known as WAPI, Wireless Authentication and Privacy Infrastructure. And they circulate the regulation that any device, any wireless device that should be internet or that should be installed in China should be comply with this WAPI protocol. So international vendor failed to provide equipment inside the China. That's the content provider and tech companies problem. Nowadays is demolished, but that type of thing is not gone forever. That may raise in the future again, and that causes the fragmentation of internet. These are the general driving actors and factors. What are the impact on the NREN? Limited access to the resources, as NRENs provided services or accessibility to the online journal, online research papers, online data sets, and large number of data sets. If the internet is fragmented, it hampers directly to the limited accessibility to the resources. Collaboration challenges. Indian community depends on their collaboration. If collaboration is hampered due to internet fragmentation, the joint program and data sharing across the border, geographical border, will be hampered as well. International partnership, as well as if collaboration is breaking down, partnership will be break down too. Innovation barrier. Innovation mainly depends on the collaboration activity. If the collaboration is hampered, innovation will be hampered too. Data sovereignty and privacy concern. Actually, this is really challenging to maintain sovereignty with data, to maintain data privacy, as well as maintain the internet sovereignty with open internet access. These both are conflicting. There is a clash. So deploying both needs internet governance, strict internet governance for NREN separately. And definitely it will cause digital divide, because if access to the resources becomes unavailable, online course curriculum may be hampered, online learning platform can be hampered, online university course curriculum can be hampered too. That definitely will divide that will cause the digital divide, because all these things, all these courses may not be available in one part of a region, one region. So we need to get those access from different part. If I lost that connectivity, that will divide the digital, that will more prominent for digital division. What can be the way forward? It can be global cooperation through discussion or through strong agreement between parties that, okay, for this period, this content should not be blocked or this content should not be censored. Technological standardization. It can be global standardization and initiation of open source activity. Advocacy for openness. And strengthening international organization, like I mentioned, that some countries doesn't trust properly to the current international organization and they want a separate body. It can be discussed how this standardization body issue can be mitigated. Engaging governments and regulators. While we discuss everything, we always blaming them, but when we make some regulation or make some standardization, we never engage these government bodies. So during, I think, through internet governance, this issue can be mitigated. And public awareness and education. What is my right? What I supposed to get? People should be educated more. That's all. It can be. Now the part of acknowledgement, I take help from ChatGPT, Internet Governance Forum, and some publicly available documents to prepare my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you,
If
Mr.
there is any
Arifin.
question.
for your amazing presentation, explaining every details of internet fragmentation in a very simple language, I will say. So thanks for the presentation. Any question from the audience? Any question is there from online audience?
I'd like to ask a question to the honorable presenter.
Please,
Actually,
please introduce yourself and go ahead with the question.
what type of challenges do you
Please
really
introduce
see?
yourself first.
Okay, I'm Abu Nasser Mohammad Nafiu. I'm a network engineer at BDREN. My question is to the presenter that what type of challenges do you really see in Bangladesh towards fragmentation of internet?
Okay, thank you, Rafiu. In Bangladesh, we face mainly 2 or 3 types of internet fragmentation issues. One is like freedom of speech. If any issue raises, the available podcasting media or social media, those contents are censored and those becomes unavailable. It may be in the particular region or it can be as a countrywide zone. This is one. And another one is like economic platform or e-commerce platform. Most of the time, whenever any financial issue raised, the online transaction becomes unavailable. This is another internet fragmentation type. And another one is like data localization law. Bangladesh, most of the cases, we deploy a data center or content provider, service provider in one region, but the DR sometimes we need to make it host in the cloud or other places. But due to this data localization policy, it becomes unavailable. So these are the 3 major things that we face in the recent days.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other question? I have one question for you. What about the internet kill switch that has been established in Bangladesh and also probably in many other countries? I will ask the same to Mr. Mahi for Sri Lanka. So what do you think? Is it a step towards internet fragmentation?
Definitely, it's a drastic step to the internet fragmentation because we all know this internet kill switch is used. Even Russia passed the internet sovereignty law, which is actually the internet kill switch law. Anytime they want, they require, they feel that it's required, they activate the internet kill switch, and whole Russia is out of the connectivity from global network. This is one. Another one, as I mentioned through my presentation, in 2019, Iran activated this internet kill switch when the protest against the fuel crisis began. And India used that in 2019 in Kashmir as well. And we all know the Great Firewall of China. That is also a formation of internet kill switch. So definitely it's a major driving things that kill switch definitely is one of the major part of this internet fragmentation. But the issue is whether we use it and how we want to use it. It has both good cases and bad cases.
Yes, so to my view, technology and politics both should go
Side by side.
side by side, hand
Yes,
in
sir.
hand.
Yes, sir.
If politics dominates over technology, then it is a problem. And even if technology dominates over politics, then national security will be in hazard.
Right, right, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your nice presentation again.
Thank
So
you, sir.
our next presenter will be from online. If you allow me some space here. The next presenter will be Pardish Muslimzadeh Tehrani. I hope I could pronounce it correctly, who is the associate head of the law school at the University of Sunderland. Before joining Sunderland University, she was senior professor. I have lost it. Senior lecturer and visiting associate professor at the Faculty of Law, University of Malaya. Her research spans the area of information technology law, international law, and legal research methodology. She is the author and co-author of more than 70 research papers. Mind it, more than 70 research papers, books, book chapters, and conference papers. She has served on many conferences, seminars, forums, and workshop program committees, and delivered talks at various panels, NGOs, research centers, and international bodies such as ICRC and other human rights organizations. So it's a pleasure to have her, and we always have her in our conferences or in our sessions. So we are fortunate to have her today again. So Ms. Pardish, the floor is yours. If you can start.
Hello, thank you so much for the really kind introduction. Let me know if you can hear me properly.
Yes, yes, we can hear, we can see, so you can continue.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Thank you so much for the great and generous introduction. The topic of my presentation today is about the international law, the challenges in preventing internet fragmentation. As we all know that cyber activities have become an integral part of the international relation. This is the things that we cannot ignore it that existed, and the vast internet connectedness of network technologies and cyber processes across the border brought some societies and although make the societies closer together, but at the same time, it creates some hassles and problems and creates some kind of new vulnerabilities. So in terms of the application of the law, we have the international law, which United Nations and some other scholars have been approved that the international law can be applied for the cyber operation, for the any kind of cyber issues. However, there are problems in terms of the application of international law, which later I will explain it all in detail. The next things which arise from all these problems is the internet fragmentation. The internet fragmentation is about the global internet becoming divided along geographical, political, and technological lines. And it is characterized by the emergence of a distinct national or regional internet ecosystem, which often governed by varying law and regulations, because different countries, different region has different approaches in terms of the application of law, and even different region, they have a different school of thought in terms of the application of the law and implementation of the law. So this fragmentation can hinder the open and interconnectedness of the nature of the internet, which could impact on communication, impact on the commerce among the nations, and also lots of human rights and humanitarian issues. The challenges in preventing the internet fragmentation, the first thing which arises from this problem is sovereignty and jurisdiction. As I mentioned in the previous slide, different countries have their own legal and regulatory frameworks governing the internet, which arise to the problems of the internet fragmentation. And then they have mandate of some states in data localization, which can limit the free flow of information across jurisdiction and contribute to the fragmentation. as explained in the previous presentation and arise some question by the audience. For example, we have the GDPR that pose some restriction in free flow of data. Although some countries, for example, US and UK and Europe, they try to have some kind of new approaches to overcome these problems. But as we can see it caused so many hassle and problem. Then again, in terms of these challenges, we have various approaches on content regulation based on the context of different countries, based on the law of the different countries. We have various cybersecurity and surveillance practices in different regions and countries. As I said by the previous presenter, like countries in terms of their surveillance practices, like Iran, China, and some part India. It has impact on technical standard and infrastructure, which can lead to disparities in access to information and freedom of expression. And another point which needs to be raised here is about the disrupt of trade and commerce. In order to fulfill all these requirements between the nations, they have to come up and fulfill with certain criteria, which has the direct impact on trade communication among the countries. And finally, the absence of a unified global governance model. This is the main problem, which we don't have any specific global governance model which cause all these problems. As I explained in the first slide, we have the international law. However, the governance of cyberspace didn't originate only with states, because international law applies only to states. But in the cyber governance, we have academic institutions and private actors who constructed the internet, and sometimes international law cannot apply to these, to these bodies, because they're only the basis of international law is about the relationship, the relation among the nations. However, international law doesn't hold a monopoly on the regulation of the cyberspace, given the industry and civil society players. Other regulatory regimes needs to be in place in order to offer alternative vehicles to address these issues. For example, we have industry self-regulation, that nowadays we have sandboxes regulation throughout the countries to address so many issues, so many of these issues. As you know that we have a Geneva Convention in international humanitarian law, which apply to all rules and regulations of armed conflict. So there's a necessity to have a Geneva Convention to apply on the cyber operation or cyber activities among the countries. The existing position of the application of international law to cyber operation, as I said earlier, there are some hassles and problems also in the application of international law to cyber operation, because it's a new invention, new application of the international law. So both legal leaders and international legal experts agree to the position that existing international law can apply to cyber operation as well. So these are some of the most states and several international organizations. As you can see, these international organizations have affirmed that existing international law can be applied for the use of information and information and communication technology. The application of international law have been approved by all these international bodies. So under the United Nations, the report of the group of governmental experts on advancing responsible state behavior in cyberspace manifests the commitment of global leaders toward the application of various express provision and customary practices of international law to cyber operation. Currently we have the two Tallinn manual, which, as the name stated, it's not mandatory, but it gives some expression to states how to implement international law into their domestic rules and regulations. Additionally, we have case law and advisory opinion derived from the International Court of Justice have proved useful as precedent determining the future debates on the matter. Although we don't have so many specific case law and advisory opinion, particularly on the application of the international law to cyber operation, but it will be hoping that in the near future we would have more case law. However, still we need to, even for the cyber operation, for the cyber activities issues, we need to refer to the case law and advisory opinion on the conventional international law. There are some other international conventions, such as Budapest Convention on Cybercrime, although they are not really comprehensive, but to some extent can be seen as international approach to address the cyber issues. And another thing, the not yet enforced African Union Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection is going to be used as one of the international approaches to the cyber matters. Not only when I'm saying that cyber matters, because I don't want to just concentrate on cyber operation, which fall on different aspect and which fall under the international humanitarian law aspect. So as I mentioned throughout this presentation, not every single detail of how international law and specific bodies apply to cyber operation, and we need specific interpretation on different aspects of the international law, which make it prepared to apply on the cyberspace. The United Nations group of governmental experts on responsible state behavior in cyberspace, they concluded the final report, which adopted by the UN General Assembly in 2021, address many problems and many divergence by allowing for closed room deliberation and negotiation among 25 countries, including India, and 5 permanent member countries of the UN Security Council about the responsible behavior from the states in approaching the cyberspace. And here, on a large scale, the open-ended working group on development in the field of information and telecommunication in the context of the international security allowed for the participation of over 140 countries in deliberations surrounding the cyber applicability of international law. And these countries, they try to make it easier and simplify the application of international law and interpret how international law, how the substance and principle of international law can apply in the cyberspace. So here you can see some of the general principle of international law which can be applied to cyberspace. So many countries, as I explained earlier, affirm that international law can apply to the cyber activities and in cyberspace. And this includes the United Nations and also customary international law. So they recognize the obligation of every state flowing from the principle of the sovereignty, which are one of the main principles of international law, refrain from the threat to or use of force, settle dispute peacefully, and refrain from intervention in the internal affair of other states. These are some of the principles that have been approved by the countries, and some countries further recognize the obligation arising in a non-exhaustive manner from international human rights law, international humanitarian law, in relation to the law of state responsibility. Here you can see the list of a few countries which approved and identified the application of the principal international law to cyberspace. Here are some of the obligations of states under United Nations Charter. The first one is the sovereignty, which one of the most important obligation of the states, which talking about the right to freely choose its political, social, economic, and cultural system. States are under an obligation and not to allow, knowingly their territory to be used for acts contrary to the rights of other states. And also attribution which comes from the sovereignty matters also is another challenge as the threshold of physical harm needs to be fulfilled and needs to be identified in order a case can be attributed to a specific nation. Another obligation is the prohibition of wrongful intervention, which refrain or I can say prohibit the countries in interfering with the domestic affairs of other countries. And malicious cyber activities will only in some cases amount to direct or indirect use of force. And when the threshold is not fulfilled, it's really difficult to apply it to apply the international law in those situations. However, measures below this threshold may also qualify as coercive activities if it's not fall under the use of force. For example, in this aspect, we can see the activities and things that have been implemented and have been applied by the campaign in the elections, and how the countries try to use international law to sue the specific cases. Another obligation is the prohibition of the use of force, as we explained it earlier. And we should know that the vast majority of malicious cyber operations fall outside of the scope of the force, as I explained earlier. However, cyber operation might in extremes fall within the scope of the prohibition of the use of force, and therefore it constitutes a breach of Article 2 of the United Nations. And cyber operation can cross the threshold into use of force and cause significant damage into two ways. In order to, these two conditions needs to be fulfilled. So they can be part of a wider attack, kinetic attack, and outside of a wider kinetic military operation, which can cause serious harm, and it may result to massive casualties. And there are some qualitative criteria which may play a role in the assessment of the use of force, and we need to just, when a cyber operation case is happening, we need to use all these criteria in order to understand whether a cyber operation, a use of force has been happened or not. First is the severity of interference, the immediacy of its effect, the degree of intrusion into foreign cyber infrastructure, and the degree of organization and coordination of the malicious cyber operation. All these criteria have been embedded from one of the yardstick cases, which has been decided by the ICJ in Nicaragua. And although it's just a conventional international law cases, but the scholars can adopt the same specific criteria to apply it in the cyber operation activities. These are some of the obligations of states under international humanitarian law. International humanitarian law is the set of rules and regulations which apply during the armed conflict. It means that as soon as the armed conflict will be commenced,
For this, we are running out of time. Could you please cut short?
Yeah, sure. Sure, I'll try. Yeah, and then these international humanitarian law, there are some principles under international humanitarian law which approved by a few countries, and we can see that IHL can be applied in the cyber context. For example, one of the main principles is the prohibition of indiscriminate attack and cyber operation, which can be applied for the cyber operation. However, whenever an attack or a cyber attack happened, states, after the process of the attribution, states have some response options, which divided to 4 options: countermeasure, coercion, necessity, and self-defense. And based on the criteria of the cyber attack, countries can stick to one of these options. And these are some of the challenges of international law application to cyberspace. Although I mentioned, I list down a few treaties, we know that there is no specific treaty on cyber issues. There are some existential disagreement among the countries in application in the position on the international law application to cyber operation. As we have gone through, and as we could see it in the previous explanation, we need to interpret the international law in order to apply it to cyberspace. So we have some interpretive challenges in applying the international law to cyberspace. And then another problem is the problem of the attribution. Still, we have the, as well as the technical procedure in attributing specific countries or nations which deploy the attack. We have some issues in applying the international law as well. Because, as I said, international law only regulates the subject of international law, interrelationship, the relationship of the countries. And finally, the challenge of accountability, which, although attribution of state and state-sponsored cyber operation may be on the rise, accountability has proved a very challenging problem. We have data governance issues in multidisciplinary ways. The new data governance gradually developing, and the maturity can be seen a departure from one-size-fits-all approach toward a conversation on how to regulate different types of data, such as personal, corporate, public, health, and etc. And we can see the same approach on the new acts of AI Act, which has been adopted by EU, and it would UK also in the process of the application enacting the law. However, UK tried to adopt a more proactive approach by enacting specific rule in specific sector. So countries have two issues which they need to reconcile. They need to ascertain sovereignty over critical and sensitive data that needs to be stored physically on national treaties, and the fact that free flow of data across national and corporate borders facilitates economic development and contribute to the public good. However, banning free flow of data definitely would cause so many problems, particularly on the economic development. Yeah, these are some of the issues which the data governance, some factors which data governance needs to deploy in governing the data, such as technology, economy, human rights, law and human rights issues, and security. And finally, the challenges posed by internet fragmentation require a collaborative and holistic approach involving international cooperation, policy harmonization, and technical innovation. All these three factors needs to gradually reach to a consensus in order to solve the problem, and balancing the interests of various stakeholders while safeguarding the open and interconnected nature of the internet remain a complex in the world that require ongoing dialogue and innovation in the sector of international law and regulations. Thank you so much for your patience in listening to my long presentation.
Okay, thank you for this. We are not taking questions because we are running out of time, but your in-depth presentation will definitely help us in nurturing our knowledge. We have been updated with the international laws, and actually a lot of prospects are there in terms of international laws, but it depends on how we will apply those laws for preventing internet fragmentation. Nobody wants internet to be fragmented. Our next presenter will be Maheshwara Kirindigoda. Did I pronounce it correctly? Because I memorized it for such a long time.
Or you can just connect I haven't downloaded it.
So let me very briefly introduce him. Maheshwara is holding a degree in social science, that is in communication, from the esteemed Open University of Sri Lanka. Currently, he is pursuing his master's to further enrich his intellectual prowess. His foray into the world of technology commenced in 2002 because he shifted from social science to technology. So it's an adventure. He looks like an adventurous person. Maheshwara's unwavering commitment to his community is evidenced by his notable roles as the media secretary to the governor of the Central Province from 2019 to the present, and his prior role as media secretary to the governor of the UVA province from 2015 to 2018. Maheshwara served as the president of the Internet Society. He is the right person because we were looking for someone who is from ISOC. From 2019 to 2020, he was the president of Internet Society. He had a long biography, but I cut it short. I don't know which part I took and which part I rejected. If I missed something important, please.
First of all, thank you very much for attending this session at the very late evening and tiring sessions had all the day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through my slides, and while that I'm trying to intrigue some questions from your side to your mind, whether what is the role of ourselves get into the local and regional and global internet governance while thinking of cyber sovereignty and fragmentation of internet. So as within this session, we heard of what is fragmentation, internet fragmentation, and how it is being defined, how it can be done within the technological perspective, political perspective, in legal perspective, as well as economical perspective. So, so I'm not going to go bother to describe this all because they had done it. And regarding the sovereignty, what is sovereignty? Once in 350 BCE, Aristotle created a notation regarding these city-states, nations. From that onwards, we have an ideology regarding a nation, the binded to a geography. So this is the earliest way that earliest philosophical learning regarding this police or the city states, where that the sovereignty ideology comes from. So then onwards, I'm going to tell a story which is not in my presentation. It's regarding Sri Lanka. King Gajabahu, who invaded India and took 12,000 people from India to here as a punishment, because within his father's period, while his father is the king of Sri Lanka, the Indian people invade Sri Lanka. The Cholas invade Sri Lanka and took 12,000 people from Sri Lanka to there as prisoners. So as a punishment to the sovereignty issue, he went there with Nila Mahayodhya, one of the giant. It said he fished the ocean and go through the line by the created by that fist through the ocean. So he took another 12 from India and came back. So these kind of sovereignty issues are there. It's very critically we can see within all histories of our nations, all our ethnicities, within our geographies and regions as well. So sovereignty is important. So we all believe sovereignty should be there. That's why our constitutions try to protect our sovereignties. So what are the challenges cyberspace created for this sovereignty? I'm not going to present these all names, discuss this all, but 6 points that I'm going to take upon. So the self-determination and authority of a nation or the geography or a country or a community. Cyber has challenged this phase. So the determination and autonomy of a country or people or community has been challenged by this internet. So the sovereignty need to be discussed within this self, and the identities of nations, our heritage, our cultures has been challenged by the cyber space and the internet. And the security, as we discussed regarding the data security, as we discussed regarding the cyber attacks, so the defense and also the colonization within this under the data economic colonizations are there. And again, the economic also being challenged with this cyber interaction or the intervention of cyberspace. The political legitimacy always being a key issue when it comes to the sovereignty, because it's a concept of politics, where we hired it from political perspective. And civic participation has been challenged because, when it comes to Sri Lanka, we are Sri Lankans here who lived in the Sri Lanka, but within the Sri Lanka, there are some communities who create the sovereignty issues within themselves. The internet space created a challenging opportunity for them to attack the governments, the constitutions as well. So the participation of these people are being given by the internet and cyberspace. So very interesting stories are there. We do not need to discuss because these are matters in global politics. As even last week, we have seen some issues with the Kachatiu Dupat, the Kachatiu Island, which owns by Sri Lanka, and some digital space attacks are going on regarding this. Those are sovereignty issues, and those are the challenges I clearly identifies very important to be discussed. So we need to safeguard our digital identity as well, while protecting the fragmentation. I'm not supporting the fragmentation, as well as I'm not supporting challenging the sovereignties of nations. So how we can move to a place where that we can derive these both win and win solutions. It is, I believe, it's internet governance. When it comes to cyber sovereignty, internet governance play a very critical role. So, internet governance and the cyberspace challenges are not just bound to a country, not bound to a community, not bound to a just one person. So it's needed the mitigation of individual, country-wise, regional-wise, and global-wise engagement and enrollment of the internet governance. So my whole presentation ideology is to encourage you people to get engaged with these internet governance processes around the world, around your country, around your region, and move with these internet governance processes and get involved and support the internet governance and discuss within how to protect your sovereignties in your areas, as well as give your opinions, give your support. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Mahi, for your brief presentation. Of course, it was very much in-depth. You are living, no question.
No, if you
will take?
yeah.
So I have one small question, because we had ICT Act, then it was transformed into Digital Security Act. Then after strong protest against Digital Security Act for its misappropriation by the government, it is being now converted as Cyber Security Act, which is actually alleged to be almost similarly harmful for the citizens, for the journalists, for the outspoken people, as the Digital Security Act was. So do you have any such act in your country?
Yes. In third month of 2022, we passed the the Cyber Security Act. If you go through this act, the history of this act, it started in 2017 and it ended in 2022. What happened? We had to protest against this act, even though we know that it is a very critical act that we needed. But the openness, the transparentness of the creating process of this act was being attacked by ourselves. We had to, because it was presented to the public without the definition of critical infrastructures. And while that, they created a body to authority without any definition regarding the issue. So there are a lot of problems, 17 problems we had identified. We had to fight for that. The open process, the language barriers within the act itself had been penalized. So because of that, from 2022, they had passed it without putting it to the public. Now it's being enacted.
So what is the impact actually?
Impact. The GDPR, even the act passes for something like for Sri Lanka also. 7 points are the same 7 points in the EU GDPR Act in the Sri Lanka. But act is there. It's not being used. So acts are to be used for the prevention of the security when it comes to the Security Act. But it is not being used, but it is used to propagate issues for the public people.
Yeah, actually, I think that each and every country needs such an act, but the problem is the misutilization or misappropriation of the laws in the acts.
That's why we encourage people to get involved in the process of policy making, which we are calling the internet governance.
Okay, in our case, the government doesn't want you to be involved. They pass the act by themselves. That is another issue, controversial issue. We should not go into the details. But from Internet Society's point of view, I think you should play your due role. Okay, so thanks to the audience for your presence here. And I appreciate, and these types of sessions on internet governance will continue in APAN. And we are trying to create a working group on internet governance from NREN's point of view, from APAN side, to contribute our voice, to raise our voice in the APNIC. Okay, so thank you. Thank you for all the online attendants, for the speakers. They are still there, the speakers and also the audience. Because of your presence, the session was interesting. We took a little bit over time, but it was an engrossing session and we all enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Nice to see all of you again.
Thank you.
Yes,